One of the biggest questions we get is, how much money can you actually make as an education consultant? And honestly, it's the wrong question because there isn't one right answer for that question. Some consultants can make an extra $10,000 a year doing the work they absolutely love and feel great about it. Others build six-figure businesses. Some eventually build companies that generate $500,000 or more in revenue. So the better question is, what does that journey actually look like? So today we're pulling back the curtain on the 5 stages we've moved through as education consultants, from signing our very first paid client to building a business that no longer depends entirely on us. If you've ever wondered what's actually possible or what comes after the first contract, this is the episode for you.
Here's what makes this so difficult. Most educators only ever see 2 versions of success. Version 1 is, I'm still teaching. Or version 2, someone is a famous speaker with best-selling books traveling the world. And there's not really anything in between.
Right. Nobody ever talks about the messy middle.
No.
You know, the first $5,000 contract or the first consulting contract or the first launch that only gets a handful of registrations or the first year where you're wondering if this actually can become a business.
So then people wrongly assume that success just magically happens overnight for the chosen few, or they assume they either have it or they don't. But honestly, neither of those things is true.
Right. After experiencing our own journeys, then coaching hundreds of educators, we've realized that there are actually predictable stages almost everyone moves through.
Mm-hmm.
So each stage has a different income range, different challenges, and different priorities.
And if you know what stage you're in, you'll stop comparing yourself to someone who's simply further down the road and know what to focus on for the phase that you're in right now.
Okay, so by the end of today's episode, you're going to understand these things. First, the 5 predictable stages of building an education consulting business.
Mm-hmm.
Second is what typically happens at each income level, from your first few $1,000s to building a business that approaches $500,000 to $700,000 a year. You're also going to learn why every stage requires a different kind of focus. And lastly, the biggest trap that keeps people stuck at each phase.
And most importantly, you'll know what's actually possible. Not because of hype, but because we've watched these stages play out over and over again in not only our own consulting businesses, but inside our own community, which has led us to realize that there's a stage at all.
Right.
So let's start where everything often starts.
Right.
Phase 1, Tom.
Phase 1.
Okay, so phase 1 is basically where you ask yourself, can I actually get someone to pay me for my expertise? So in this phase, we like to call it being committed to the launch. It's the phase where you have to go from 0 to 1, which is the hardest step of all, to go from nothing to I have something. And that seems so basic, like just starting.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're trying to move into a whole new area and way of working than you've ever done before, it is incredibly challenging. So this is where you have to really commit to a niche.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actually decide that this is something that I'm an expert in,
Mm-hmm.
that I have got receipts on, and more importantly, that you have niche fit. So it's not only something I have receipts in doing and achieving, but I know that schools and districts will actually pay me for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really, really big thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to, why we call this committed to the launch, you actually need to come up with some kind of an offering, a consulting offering. Now, that could be a one-day on-site workshop. That could be a full year integration or implementation plan. It could be an online group coaching program. It could be a live in-person event. There's so many different ways that you could do it. Those are just delivery models.
Right.
But you have to come up with some kind of a solution. You have to say, if you come to this experience or if you do this with your staff, you will get this outcome. And then you actually need to do it. And it doesn't have to be with a ton of people, honestly, like 3 to 5 people.
Yep.
And you've got a pretty good sense of validation.
Mm-hmm.
That seems really simple. Like, okay, cool, just to do a thing and get some clients.
Yeah.
But it's actually the hardest stage of all.
It is the hardest stage. I would say there's only one stage that's harder, and that's deciding to step into this consulting space. But once you're in it, this phase is really challenging because it's, you know, things often will grow exponentially. And when you're in this space, you have no exponential to grow off of, right?
No.
So you're trying to, and the problem that consultants face in this phase
Yeah.
is you're trying to create everything.
Mm-hmm.
What is my niche? What do I offer? What is my curriculum? How do I find clients? Like there's no systems in place, right?
Nothing.
And so in this phase, you're actually building everything. And so you really do have to be sort of committed to the launch because as we love to say, done is better than perfect. And I think too many educators are perfectionists or whatever, and they spend way too much time trying to perfect it because, and I don't know if it's necessarily perfectionism as it is sometimes they're performative in that educators are in the business of knowing. And when you step into the consulting space and you don't know something, suddenly it feels clunky. And we don't like that feeling. We don't like not knowing because we're always supposed to know because we literally spend every day as the smartest person in the room in front of our students. And when we step into these spaces, so this can be a phase where people are very quick to say, oh, it's not working.
Immediately.
Right?
And they
no
abandon ship as soon as they see something that's not perfect.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't get 1,000 followers on that one post. I suck at social media.
I quit.
I quit. Yeah, it really is something that you do have to kind of power through a little bit and be determined to, you have to be determined to get to the outcome, and that outcome is a launch. As imperfect as that launch might be, you have to be committed to getting to that launch because it's through the first launch where you're going to learn the lessons that it takes to go to the second launch or to refine things to get to a place where you can move forward.
I think it's important to note here, Tom, that why you have to get to that first launch is it might not work. I'm thinking of our client, Erin, who I was recently just chatting with because she finally is now leaving her job to do this full time. She launched 3 times.
Yeah.
First time, didn't feel it. Didn't feel right to her. Didn't love the way it played out. So she explained to me she actually launched 3 times and shifted the offer each time.
Yeah.
And it was like Goldilocks the third time. It was like, aha, that's the thing. I finally found it. But you can't learn what's going to work until you actually put it into reality and put it into practice and see how people react and see how you feel. We've also had situations where clients have committed to the launch, but they've realized they didn't like the way it felt for them. They actually thought this topic that they should do is actually just something that they were telling themselves they should do, and they don't actually want to do it.
Right.
And they're like, my thing's actually over here.
Right.
It's not this thing. And I don't know why I thought it was this thing. I didn't enjoy that at all.
Going back to our last episode, where do you get word of mouth if you don't have any testimonials? Where do you get any of that you can build upon? So I know it's cliche, but you have to be committed to the launch because this is going to build the foundation. And I know it sounds corny and cliche, but it is so true because refinement is always easier. Like Erin's a great example of once you do one launch, now you can refine the second launch and now you find your sweet spot with, too hot, too cold, just right. She found her sweet spot on the third launch, but if she quit after the first launch because it didn't work, no testimonials, no experience with launching, no habits on social media, all of that would have crumbled away. So this phase to me is the hardest one other than deciding to step into, because we often tell folks deciding to step into the consulting space is 80%. Now, the other 20% is everything we're talking about, which can also have its challenges and be a lot of work.
But just giving yourself the permission to do it is huge. I think the other thing we have to talk about in this phase, Tom, is finding a sustainable social media form and deciding to stay in it. So the biggest trap that we see for folks at this stage is they niche hop. And they also vanity metric chase. I would say it's those two things together. So as they're looking for likes and reach and just those vanity metrics on social media, they'll throw random things out there that they probably shouldn't really be talking about because it's not aligned to what they're actually trying to build. And it takes off and they go, oh, people want to hear more about my kids. I'm going to do an offer about how to be a parent.
Maybe
and
they
niche hop and niche hop. And then they're just chasing. And then they've actually fallen into the influencer trap. So now all they've done is set up this influencer workflow for themselves where all I do is chase what's popular online at any given moment. And then they're changing their niche constantly, which is why they can't get through a launch because it requires disciplined effort for like a minimum of 30 days. And they can't even last a week because they're changing every week. And so this is where people never get out of this phase. You have to just go, this is my hypothesis. I believe it'll work based off the receipts I have so far, and I'm willing to see it through with other people and to gather that data and determine if I'm ready to move forward. And the exit condition is that you've completed your launch, 2 to 4, but you could get as many as 15 or 20. Like there's really no cap here, but minimum of like 2 to 4 paying clients.
Yeah.
And ideally, you're going to have a raving testimonial at the end of it from those clients that the outcome was delivered. And you at this point go, my offer and my niche are not a question at all. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
That's it. Then you're out of this phase.
Yep.
And it sounds so simple and it is so complex.
It can be so complex.
It can happen as fast as 2 months. It could take people years.
Yeah. So if phase 1 is, can I get people to actually contract and pay me to do this? Phase 2,
yes.
Can I do it again? Right? So we call this repeat and root. And this is now where you're probably getting into a little bit of a higher revenue stream as a consultant. So maybe in the first phase, you may have generated, between $4,000 or maybe even like $20,000 a year. Now we're getting into a place where you're in the second phase. This is repeat and root. You're probably looking at now trying to take the next step into a place where you're maybe replacing or close to replacing a salary. It depends on where you are on the scale, right? But 35,000 to 65, 70,000-ish as we think about this root and repeat. So you've got proof, but you don't have a business yet, right? Because doing a launch once is not really a business. And Erin is, again, the example. She launched 3 times. So can I do it again? Can I repeat it, right? So this is where you start to do the launch again. So you've had a successful launch. Now we got to do another one and we got to see where that goes. Because now you're probably going to be able to raise your prices slightly. You're going to be able to move in that direction and start to raise your revenue. And you're going to build something that ultimately allows you to launch without starting from scratch. See, phase 1, you're starting from scratch. Now we're moving to a place where you can build upon what you've established and refine it, enhance it, et cetera, and so on.
Now, a key clarification here is when we say relaunch, we don't mean launch something else.
No.
Like with Erin, she had to change what she was doing each time because she genuinely didn't feel like that outcome and exit condition of testimonials and rave reviews was achieved. For her too. She wasn't just she wasn't feeling it. But this is where you take exactly what you did before and you do it again, but you add a little bit more. And so as Tom was just describing, one of the first things we recommend here is after you're out of that, we call that your beta phase, like committed to the launch. You're now going to relaunch the same offer at a 30% higher price point. This is like what you'd imagine is like your actual starting price point because it's no longer beta.
Right.
You have taken a group of people through it. You have learned from that experience. You've cut things out. You've added things. You've strengthened things, made it better. You have testimonials, so you should be pricing like it.
Yeah,
it's really just about same audience, same niche, just higher confidence.
So there's 2 types of relaunches here, really. The first, in phase 1, you're going to keep relaunching until it actually works. And then now we're going to almost lather, rinse, repeat or repeat and root as we call it.
Repeat and root.
Right, for sure. So 30% higher. So listeners, if you're doing the math on that, that means your first launch is probably 30% lower than what you'd normally charge because it is a beta and you're trying to figure it out and you're getting feedback from folks. The other thing you're going to want to do in this phase is likely, launch or what we sometimes call ship or create an in-between launch offer. And you want to do that quickly. So we're talking about a low-ticket offer here, right? So a very low-ticket course or a one-day workshop or a membership. One of our clients, Chris, of course, we've talked a lot about that. He launched a quick course and made $11,000 in 2 months, right? Kendra launched a membership and built the MRR, monthly recurring revenue, to use the business lingo. Again, the format doesn't really matter. The revenue between launches does. So you don't have to build something perfect. That revenue in between launches, so you're getting a little bit of an influx in cash. It might help you with a paid ad strategy. It might help you with other things that you're trying to finance as you get into that rhythm of launching every few months or something like that. Don't build something that's perfect. Just get something out there in between your launches so there is a revenue stream 12 months out of the year.
And the final thing we have to talk about at this stage, which is so critical, is to never stop your lead generation for anything. That means you never stop your social media. This is the trap that people hyper focus on here. And I did this myself. So that's how I know it's a trap is you're like, okay, I'm going to grow my business now. And so you go away to start building these new other things you want to add in. And you just stop everything else. And you put your head down and you focus on this amazing course, but it takes you 5 months. and you've absolutely choked out your entire pipeline because you've stopped posting, you've stopped creating, you've stopped doing anything on social media. And then when you're done, you go back to social media and it's not just like a tap you turn back on. Yeah. Now you have to restart that whole process all over again, which takes time to build the flywheel that gets people coming to you. And so this is the trap we want to warn people of, is you have to keep those other pieces of your business that you started in that first phase still running, so that you can start building out other little offers in between your launches. And in this phase, honestly, you might launch 3, 4, maybe even 5 times, depending on how short the duration is of what you're doing for people. Yeah. Because what we're trying to get to at the next stage is what we call the 1-year tipping point. Yeah. So if it took you 2 months to get to your first launch and first testimonials, this could potentially be a 10-month phase. And this is such a hard phase, Tom, as we know, because how many people do we see quit at about month 9 or 10?
It happens quite a lot, because for some reason folks think I want immediate success. It should happen for me, right? And maybe part of the challenge for educators is that we've never really been in a position where we've actually had to hustle. Now, don't misunderstand that. Teachers work incredibly hard. Educators work really hard. But we don't really have to hustle to generate quote unquote clients, because class rosters are made, schedules are created, and the students just show up. I never have to generate leads or anything like that. The only people that in schools that really do have that entrepreneurial mindset, maybe like elective teachers, because they have to build a program and they have to attract students to their program. So this is where the friction occurs, and this is where people go, oh, it's really hard, and then they sink back into the regular habits of that.
Partly, I would say yes, and yes, and it's when you put in all this work in the first year, successes and like on-site PD contracts done long-term are a lagging indicator. Yeah. So you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff and doing these little launches and making $15,000 here, $20,000 there, or $10,000 over a few months on your low ticket. And it's just going to feel like all these little bits. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, I can't do this forever. This is I thought it was going to be a lot more lucrative than this.
Yeah. And maybe a better example, because this is a longer term thing. Maybe a better example is like going to the gym 4 times and saying I haven't lost any weight, or I can't lift anymore, or whatever your metrics are, right? It's like you have to invest, and this is where you start building great habits. So once you have proof in phase 1, phase 2 is now creating something repeatable that is predictable, and putting in the work with those low ticket offers starts to generate more and more eyeballs, whether it's trust, it's consistency. You're building all the systems that really lay as the foundation. And the first year, listeners, is the hardest year. Year 2 will not be as hard as year 1. Year 3 will not be as hard as year 2. Year 1 is the hardest year. And you can get through phase 1 rather quickly, but phase 2 is the one that you're likely going to have to sink into a little bit and realize that there is a delayed benefit or reward for that exponential growth to show up.
The most important time to lean into some kind of a community, some coach, an accountability structure, because this is where we see so many people fall off. But if you can hold on through those 12 months, you will inevitably reach phase 3, which is what we call the 1-year tipping point. Now, this has a lot to do with budget cycles in schools and how long it takes for them to roll back over. Sure. So you might have had someone who was a client in your coaching program. They bought your low ticket offer. They love you, but you're not able to get booked for 5 on-site PD days at their school till the next year. And so this happens inevitably, where people feel like they've shown up, they've been posting, they've been doing outreach, they've been launching these little things to help people, they've been delivering on those things, but they're not seeing this huge return, and then it all happens at once. I remember the moment it happened for me. I made about, $65,000 at the end of my first year. By month, I would say like 15. So just over that 1-year tipping point, I realized that I had already now contracted for the next year $160,000. I was like, what? And I'm not even into this is just what I have contracted. Yeah. I don't have, I haven't even worked the year. Yeah. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And so that happened for me. And you kind of mentioned that this is something to expect. And now we've seen it happen for so many of our clients. We have that great episode with Kendra a ways back where we recorded right at her 1-month tipping point. Yeah. We talked about Chris earlier. He's at the 1-year tipping point. He is absolutely flooded with PD requests right now. Yeah. But this Carly, it's happened for.
Yeah.
But this is a really interesting phase because this is where you need to be thinking, regardless of what other offers you've been trying to do, digital, online coaching, whatever, people will ask you to come to their school. They're going to ask you to keynote. And so you just have to be ready and not let it surprise you as if it'll never happen for me. And then it does. And then you panic and underprice and do all these weird things that people do in that moment.
Yeah.
So you have to price PD strategically from the start. You have to know the exact metrics on why you're pricing the way you are. You have to also know the cost to your time because you can just start saying yes to everything, flood your calendar, and choke out other parts of your business and end up doing work you don't even want to do. And so it almost like resets you a little bit because then you're like, wait, I hate this now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it is a really interesting phase for people to hit. But this is where, if you haven't already, adding like consistent paid ads as something that can take over the marketing when you have less time, because now you're on a plane, you're traveling a lot more, you're doing a lot of on-site work, you can't be as consistent on social media. Well, paid ads can take that over for you. There is some really strategic things you have to start doing.
Yeah, paid ads can absolutely be an accelerant. And the other thing you need to think about here is, in a weird way, you've kind of accelerated your career and you're doing great work. But what is also going to happen in this phase is that the stakes are going to get higher. You're going to go to bigger school districts. You're going to be working with more high profile organizations and things like that. So you've got to keep your eye on the prize, which is to keep delivering high quality PD every single time you speak or every time you have a program, because you're going to have more influential people or more influential opportunities in your purview. So the tipping point isn't actually a marketing strategy. No. The tipping point is the compounding results of the relationships that you build over the years, and pair that with excellent delivery.
Yeah.
And now you've got word of mouth on fire, because pretty soon there's even a point where it goes past word of mouth where people will change schools and hire you again. I experience this a lot, which is people move schools and they're like, hey, we want to do that again. And now I've just got to repeat work. Internationally, that happens to me all the time. We're like, I'm working with someone, it's the third time we've worked together. And it's just like, hey, now I'm in this school. It's time for us to go back to these fundamentals. And we're like, all right, let's do it again. So those relationships and that, like, it is always about the delivery. Like, no matter what strategy, you're not tricking people through ads and all this stuff. The bottom line is, if you deliver high quality transformation and that impacts students and the results of the school, they start to notice those differences. That is an accelerant that is priceless.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the exit condition that we often look for and that we experienced is, this is when you're going to see the huge pivot in your marketing, if you will, from you have to go to people, which is called outbound, to they all start coming to you, which is called inbound. Did you ever do outbound or outreach? Well, you did some outreach back in the day. We talked about the conference.
I did a little bit of outreach that way.
But you haven't done outreach in forever.
Not really. People just email me out of nowhere, or I get a request through, a different avenue or channel or things like that. It's now at that tipping point. Times 100, which is... You have a handler
who handles all your requests, basically.
Yeah, for sure. For my U.S. contracts and all of those things happen over time, though. They've happened over, 20 plus years of speaking and 15 years of doing it full time. So those things can happen. But this is a place where, again, the trap you talked about, quitting 8 or 9 months into this phase, is just that you're right there. The plant is just about to burst through the soil. And then you stop watering it and the plant dies and you think, see, it didn't work, but
it was literally right there.
It was right there.
This is why we always say success is inevitable to those who keep showing up. We're going to say it again, I'm sure, time and time again, but it is so, so true. And this is why so many people feel that consulting didn't work for them, is they just quit 1 month too soon.
Yeah. So we often say to folks, listen, you put in the work months 1 to 10, then the revenue starts showing up months 11 to 18, and you start to see that absolutely blowing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of that. Okay. So phase 4, right?
What is it, Tom?
I have a business now.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
I actually have a business, and it's generating revenue where we are at a place where I'm drowning, right? It's just like, you are almost like we call this the hybrid operator, right? Yeah. Right. You have a real business now. It's PD, group coaching. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You got some PD on site. You got digital coaching going on. It's all running, and now you're drowning. Every new client is a new admin burden, right? Every new dollar requires more of them. The question here is now like, okay, how do I get clients? That's not the question. How do I remove myself as the bottleneck? Like, how do I stop being the challenge here, right? Because now you become the issue because you just can't do everything. And you and I've talked about this, that there's often, this place where as a founder, and you, of course, are as a founder, you come into this consulting work, you are a founder of your own consulting business. No one can do it like you. But you just, because
you did it all yourself.
Yeah,
so
did it
no
all
one
myself,
else can do
and
it.
I bootstrapped it, and I'm, and I can do everything because I'm just that special. And then you burn out or potentially burn out because you're trying to do everything and you become the bottleneck in your own business.
Can I just say something here? We said this on a coaching call. I think it was last week or the week before. And our clients were like, no way. I promise you, there will come a time, and it's this phase specifically, where you're going to daydream about those early days and how quiet it was. Yeah. And you just got to plan out your activities each day and the work you do on social media. I was like, I miss my mental health walks because things are going to grow so much. And it will get to a place where you'll realize like, oh, I'm running a business. Like I'm not just doing this little passion project that maybe one day will make me money. Yeah. I have to make $50,000 decisions. I have to make $100,000 decisions. Yeah. It's just they say new level, new devil, right? It's like, and then you do actually miss those early days, which that this can be a trap in and of itself. Sometimes people jump ship and they burn it down here to start over and go back to the early fun building days. Yeah. And you actually start to realize that those early days are fun. And when you're in them, you hate it. All you dream about is getting to, and then you get there and you're like, oh, I miss building.
So in this phase, we're talking about, you have a serious business where you're probably earning about in revenue, maybe somewhere around $250,000 a year. Like you've got a very serious consulting business going on right now, and you are the bottleneck. So, shout out to Dan Martell in the book we read, Buy Back Your Time, right? Not that he invented the concept, but really articulated it well in his book that you and I read. Yeah. And what we started to recognize and remind ourselves after having read that book is you have to remove yourself from the administrivia that happens every day. So the first move we often talk about in this phase is to hire a virtual assistant, right? You got to get out of your email.
Out of your email, out of your calendar.
Get out of your calendar, because that administrative stuff or administrivia, as we talk about, is going to eat away at the hours that you could be spending on delivery or lead generation, right? Yeah. A virtual assistant can pay for itself within 60 days if you're actually generating revenue to help cover that, right? And now you might think to yourself, yeah, but I like being on my email, but
no,
that's such a low yield part of your business.
It is,
like it's not answering emails doesn't really generate revenue. So, so maybe occasionally you'll get one, but most of the time it's not a revenue generator. It's an organizational thing. So, if you within 60 days, if you're freed up from spending an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on your email, think of how many more clients you could engage in during that time, how many more launches you might be able to do during that time, and how many opportunities it frees you up to generate more revenue.
Now, this goes hand in hand with systematizing your delivery. Right. So when we say virtual assistant, that can actually mean a lot of things. And a lesson we learned the hard way, so we'll give it to you for free, is you can't hire someone who does everything. Right. You can't have someone who executes on marketing tasks and admin tasks and sales tasks. Like you just can't. Like they're a person who has a career in a specific area. You can't just make them a jack of all trades. No. So the perfect hire first is an executive assistant. Yeah. And what an executive assistant is amazing at, and you have to remember, we hire thinking, I'm the only one that can do it. And you get someone who has a whole career of doing this at a much higher level than you ever have. And the second they come in, they're better at it. And you're like, well, that was humbling. Yeah. But what they will do is they'll help you systematize your delivery. So they're going to create what are called, I think the business lingo is an SOP, like a standard operating procedure, or we just call them playbooks. We stole that from Dan Martell's book. Yeah. Yeah. But this idea that here's exactly how we do this at its absolute best. Here's exactly how we do this at its absolute best. And this is going to start to apply to your client work. So when I get a new client, what's the optimal way to onboard them? When I finish with a client, what's the optimal way to gather testimonials or follow up? And you're going to just have to start to really look hard at your business and be, where am I just burning my time because I don't have any of it to give? And where am I investing in things that actually move the needle? And if they do move the needle, let's write it down. Let's get some training together. Because the more you put all these things on paper and you record how you're doing them, you can start to move more and more people and virtual assistants into marketing, into sales. You could hire a full-time closer who starts to get you off of the calls that you're required to do to close those district contracts. You can have people working on your behalf. And so this is a really important and challenging stage. It was a hard one for us to go through. We made a lot of mistakes. But a big thing here too is you actually start to look at your year intentionally. You don't just go, oh, I hope I make money this year. You go, I'm going to be making money. So what kind of money do I want to be making and where? And you sit down and look at your year calendar. You make projections. It's a very different way of thinking.
Because the reason you have to do that for a number of different reasons. One of them is that your PD requests are going to start filling your calendar further and further ahead. Once I started booking 6 to 9 to 12 months ahead of time, I'd have things on my calendar for next July or next August. And it's like, you have to work around that. So if you're thinking, okay, when am I going to launch my online group coaching program? Oh, I got to work around this PD offer that I've got or this long-term PD contract that I've secured. All of those different moving parts have to be put into place. So you really do have to start planning more long-term to see where you have gaps in your calendar where you could actually go through a 30-day launch and fill your coaching program or things like that. So you stop reacting to the academic calendar and you start actually building around it, right? So the trap here, of course, is remaining as that lone operator for way too long.
The GSD mindset,
right?
Right?
Absolutely, right? And tell the listeners what that means.
Get shit done. This is what I have completely fallen prey to so many times. It's now you've got to create the opportunity for more space so you can actually exponentially grow because you've become the bottleneck. So until you get out of the way, you're going to stay stuck in this phase. 100%. So the exit condition to move into the final phase is you've got your first virtual hire in place and fully operating. You have delivery systems that have completely removed you from all of the logistics of your business. You're now just the creative force. And importantly, you've got revenue flowing from multiple streams, and you might even not need to do launches anymore,
right?
Because things are just flowing constantly.
Yeah, for sure.
Which brings us to the final phase, which is in many ways the phase you're in and we're in because by proxy, but Tom's been in consulting for a lot longer. So I'd say I'm still very much like hybrid operator in some ways, but you're in this one, which is beyond the founder. Now, this is when you have been in the field for a substantial amount of time. You have a ton of name recognition. You're like Tom, booking a year and a half to 2 years into the future, and you realize it's time to grow something that lives beyond you. Because in the hybrid operator phase, you're still very much like the visionary leader. But when you're thinking beyond the founder, Tom's thinking like, well, I don't want to be traveling and speaking. And be a road warrior for the next 10 years as I'm turning, 70. I really want to figure out how do I eventually kind of sunset this career. And I don't want it to all rely on me. Right. And so you start thinking, how could this exist where I am actually not the consultant sole source of knowledge?
Yeah, it's almost a sunset and a sunrise. It's almost like a rephasing or a recalibration of the career. So it's not, when we say sunset the career, it's like sunset the road warrior phase and start sunrising a different and reimagining, what this can be. So, you're at, you get to a place where you're so busy, but then part of it is you're on the verge of maybe like what happens if you get sick or what happens if you get hurt or what happens like things, if the business is solely dependent upon you, then, you have to be mindful of that. So one of the things that I think is really critical at this point is you're going to start to separate yourself from the operation of the business. So you're going to start thinking about things like launching a flagship annual event, right? You're going to think about, or a national kind of intensive process or program under a certain brand, right? You're going to build those things.
Yeah. Can I just clarify something?
Yeah.
Just one step, I think, for folks
Yeah.
before the kind of the things you launch is essentially you're creating a brand that is an organization and not necessarily you.
Right.
So you're moving from a personal brand to an organization. I think that's just really important for folks to.
Yeah,
So
that's really
for
important.
instance,
So, for example, we have launched the Canadian Assessment Center, right, where
Yeah.
you and I are the founders and the leaders of that organization. But part of the strategy here is we have consultants that we deploy to go and present PD. And you and I kind of broker those contracts on behalf of those consultants, and we speak to school districts. And part of this is, of course, using your name recognition as kind of credibility and leverage as you start to move into a space where you're cultivating new voices. So one of the overt things that I've said when we started this Canadian Assessment Center was I want to have a role in mentoring a new generation of voices in the assessment space. And if I can leverage my longevity and credibility and all of those things that have happened for me over the course of my career to help others move into that space so we can start to transition this career so I can be that person that, is not so much a figurehead, because that sounds like you're not doing anything, but you and I take a lot of the sales calls, right? You and I will speak to the districts, and the credibility that we bring to those conversations can really add. So if you're in that position, you might think like, how do I replace myself? If you, for example, had 5 people that wanted you to speak on the same date, you couldn't do it. You'd need people or an organization or something to be able to deploy. So now you have consultants or associates who might be going on your behalf. So launching that flagship annual event, a national, where people now want to come and hear you speak because you are now the brand. You are the face of that brand. You've started an organization.
You don't wait to get accepted at conferences.
No. So it's your stage, it's your community, it's your intellectual property. So this becomes a recurring brand asset and a revenue anchor for any of your slow seasons.
Now, this is where you also start hiring towards the next bottleneck. So you're going to have sales bottlenecks. Like we are going to need to hire a sales team at some point as we grow CIC, like we are with Unleash Yes, or someone who actually runs the operations of your business. Like you really do kind of become the fading founder and owner. And here's the truth, and we're not there yet. Please don't think what we're about to say is, but this is where you can eventually exit your business. You can't sell a solopreneur style consulting business because you are the product.
I could never sell Tom Schimmer Consulting because
but you could sell Canadian Assessment Center.
It could be something that grows into something. And
which is a huge way to give you a big chunk of money for like retire. Not that you need it, but like for retirement or
exactly.
So this is kind of where this is as far as we can take you on the podcast because this is where we are right now.
Yeah,
basically.
That's where we are. And in the short term, we may even look at a second virtual assistant to try to manage the influx, because right now one virtual assistant is doing everything for us, but we can see a time where that grows. We may need a second person. We may need sales. We may need all sorts of things, event coordinators. But that all happens as you hit certain revenue and you start to recognize, and listeners, this is maybe one of the most important things that you take from this episode, is you really have to be acutely aware of any bottleneck that is starting to occur in your business, and you've got to try to fix that as quickly as you can. Each phase comes with a kind of bottleneck in a way, and you've got to recognize it and you've got to be able to maneuver. So what we want you to recognize as you think about these 5 phases is that the bottleneck is the reason you're not growing into the next phase. It's not a matter of effort. It's a matter of just getting out of the way and understanding how to grow.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing we have to add here is that there is a trap, as there is in every phase. And the trap here is treating this, what we just described probably seems ridiculous and like a fantasy.
Yeah.
I will never get somewhere like that. But we promise you, this is actually a lot closer than you think it might be. And the trap that we actually see a lot of people, even in our own field, fall into is they keep acting like, oh, that's not for people like me. I couldn't do that. And they unintentionally almost keep themselves in that employee mindset. And they limit the impact of their work. They limit the impact of their mentorship. Because if you can have 25 other Tom Schimmers out there doing what you do in schools and districts, that's just going to be exponentially better for the education system as a whole. And so you kind of have to let go of like, this is bigger. It is bigger than you. And it's not just about you. And so there is a little bit of ego death, I think, in there too, that people like, when we did our CAC annual conference and people were raving about all the consultants, I think what's such an amazing testament to you, Tom, though, is that like that made you more happy than anything else.
Yeah.
Seeing how amazing they each did and the incredible results they're getting and the people that immediately wanted to book them for PD, it really probably makes you feel like this is why
100%.
I did all the things I did for so long. Is people that are carrying the message and the work forward.
Yeah. I recognize that my name carries some weight in the industry, and I know that that can be an influence, and I've had my flowers, to use that expression, right? I've traveled to 27 countries. I've worked all over the world. I have had those things, and to watch our consultants step into that arena and get such raving reviews from people, I just felt very proud. You know what I mean? I almost felt like a proud papa in a way. You know what I mean? I know that sounds stupid and weird, but I did. I felt like you and I were looking around at this event where we weren't very nervous. We were like, should we be more nervous about this? For some reason, this is going very well. I don't understand. And it did. And I've had several people tell me independently that it was one of the best professional, if not the best professional conference they've ever been to. And I'm like, that was our first one.
Yeah.
So I just felt very proud. I felt, Danielle, Carly, Josh as our speakers 100% earned that because they are really good at what they do. But I just felt proud that you and I gave them that opportunity to really step into that arena and establish themselves. And we've seen the result of that subsequent to the conference now with contracts coming their way. And just to be able to say we had a hand in that, I love that. I love that for us.
So we hope today's episode gave you something incredibly valuable. Perspective. Because whether you're trying to earn that lucrative first $5,000, replace your teaching income, or build something much bigger, every successful consultant started in exactly the same place.
Right. They committed to taking the next step. So if you'd like help figuring out what phase you're currently in and what your next move should be, we would love to chat with you. You can book a call with our team using the link that's in the show notes. We'll help you identify where you are on the journey and whether we're the right people to help you reach the next stage.
And if today's episode helped expand your thinking about what's possible, please subscribe to the show, leave us a review, share it with another educator who's wondering if there's something bigger waiting for them as well. We would love that. Thank you so much. Yes, Club. We'll see you next week.